Gents, good to have you all back together again. The band's back together. Let's kick some things around here. Jeremy, let's start with you. Where you been? We were sending out the bloodhounds, thought you might have died, or maybe you were back east somewhere getting some special training from your CIA masters.
Right. Look, life is ebb and flow, and I really believe that you should speak when people are listening. And I think that you and I did some pretty major drops that I think people are still trying to understand, and it's going to take a while. So I really needed some time to sit back and see how everybody is progressing forward. Additionally, I mean, never idle over here. I have some pretty exciting things coming forward. And so I've just been working on that. My life is not all public, you know?
Your many fans and followers on various social media, and I'm talking specifically about the people who hate you, have really kind of missed you. And they're wondering when we're going to see more videos. There are people who are genuinely interested. Hey, you were dropping a bunch of stuff there in this year. Why aren't there more? And part of the reason is you did release a clip from the USS Russell, the stuff that was shot from the deck of these objects over the ship. And unlike the earlier video drops, the Pentagon would not confirm that these were real. Can you walk us through that? What happened?
Yeah, and so there's kind of two parts to it. So this is a very important series of drops that you put them together and you get this big picture. Never before have we had the thermal, the normal visual, the green like IR pyramids, and then just normal deck footage, all from the Viper teams and all from military employees. So in my eyes, there's two parts here. So one is, of course, there's more to drop. I have a lot more to drop. I will do that. But everybody needs to work on their end too. So we didn't get a direct confirmation on that third video. We should talk about maybe why. It's not that it's any less authentic. It's just that official confirmation from the Pentagon, specifically from Susan Go, didn't come, the next day. So what does that mean? We'll talk about that. But also, I really hoped the public would get a little more involved. I mean, it's not, I can put something out. I can vet it for myself. Only you and I know our sources. But like the public needs to get involved here. They should be fighting if they want to know the truth. If they think I'm full of BS, then find out and call me out. But really, I think if they dug in, they'd find that what I released is absolutely genuine like everything else. So with that said, why didn't they confirm that last video, the USS Omaha deck footage? And oddly enough, we have recently learned, all of us, that anything UAP related given to the UAPTF is inherently classified now. So that's kind of a burn, because I made sure that they had everything that we were going to release before we released it. So this is like some retroactive thing where everything's classified now. So maybe that's why we didn't get an answer directly, but maybe it's also just laziness of the public. And, now everybody's got, radar, a thermal, IR, normal video, and they should get to work. I mean, that's my opinion.
I remember that a lot of the chatter that was at the time was, well, why would Susan Go approve this, give out the information and confirm that these things were real? And it was either we were in league with her, or she was spreading disinformation, or all kinds of different dark visions of what was going on. But she had no choice in confirming that stuff. I mean, I guess she had a choice, but the fact that she did was really surprising.
Right. It was surprising to all the military people and even sources of ours. It was surprising. But, I think also it's an act of self-defense, or maybe she's not that, horrible of a person and she wants the truth to be out there and she's a little bit bound by her overlords. I don't know. But ultimately, here's the deal, is we have a chance now. There is footage out there. There's more coming. This is a chance for everybody to get involved and demand answers if they want to know answers. We never worked with anybody. This is not given to us on a, gold plate by some, part of the UAPTF. This is you and me and investigative journalism and finding sources and developing relationships over years and getting this information. So I don't know, people have weird ideas when they don't see transparently what happened.
Danny Silva, a lot of big shoes have dropped this year, in addition to the videos and things in the last couple of weeks. One of them being this legislation that's moving through Congress, seems to have bipartisan support. A year ago, they were talking about creating the UAP task force, didn't give it any staff or budget, but that was still a step forward. And now it looks like there is strong bipartisan support for the creation of a program. Not sure where it's going to be housed, whether in the DoD or Space Force or NASA. Can you sort of give us the broad strokes of the legislation that was proposed, and then this Gillibrand Amendment that sent it into another level?
Yeah, and I'll probably use some help from Joe and Ryan with this too. But we've had a few different, I guess you would call them amendments or legislation. I reported on one of them. I think it was in June, and then we had another one, and then we have this one. What's great about this one is they seem to have used a lot of Chris Mellon's own wording, and Chris Mellon was seemed to be the harshest critic of what we thought was great stuff. We would hear from Elizondo after some of this legislation would come out or be proposed, and Elizondo would tell us, you know, it's great because he's a glass half full type of guy, and then we would kind of get burned a week or two later when Mellon just says it's not good enough. That's been happening kind of for years. That happened with the task force. We were all excited with the UAP task force, and then Mellon comes out and says it's two people with no funding and it's just not good enough. So what's really cool about this one is Mellon's on board with it, the harshest critic. And they're going to be starting the, what was it, the ASRO, and then that other office too. Joe and Ryan are going to know the exact names. They're slipping my mind right now. But so it's just really good, and I hope it gets passed. And the fact that they're using Chris Mellon's own wording, seemingly, in the legislation is really shows how much clout they have behind the scenes. I mean, imagine being able to have the ear of politicians on both sides of the aisle, and they're making legislation based on your recommendations, and that really seems to be what's going on. Joe and Ryan, can you help me with the ASRO name and some of the details?
I know, I mean, anomaly surveillance and resolution office. I don't know the name of the other.
Aerial and Transmedium Advisory Committee.
There you go. And for me, the most exciting thing, first of all, we have, it's not just her, it's not just Gillibrand, it's Marco Rubio is co-sponsored, Martin Heinrich, all senators, Lindsey Graham, Roy Blunt. So they're jumping on. I don't know why, if they think this is like a winning political move at this point, maybe why, or they really realize how serious this is. I know what Rubio, we know he was in from the beginning. But for me, the most exciting part is this is, and I interviewed George and Colin Kelleher recently, this is basically OSAP. It's the big thing that sticks out is it says they're going to conduct field investigations of incidents involving UAP, dealing with adverse physiological effects, update on any efforts to capture or exploit UAP, testing of materials. It's everything, almost everything we want. So if this happens, and I'll believe it when I see it, but if this happens and they're going out interviewing people who have had close encounters, they're going to get stories that we've heard about and read about in Hunt for the Skinwalker and Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. How they handle that, I don't know, but it's exciting in theory if this actually happens the way she spells it out in her language.
And we were
Ryan,
kind
I
of
don't know.
getting updates on this stuff over time. It was first they were talking about possibly closing down the UAPTF, doing something else. Then we heard maybe they would be including biological effects, aka injuries, crash materials. That got us really excited. Chris Mellon still wasn't all the way on board with that. So this took all the best things from everything and all the best advisors chipping in. And now it's just, this seems to be like the Super Bowl of legislation going on.
Ryan, I don't know if you and your alter ego, UFO Jesus, are in direct contact with Chris Mellon. My sense of it, both publicly and privately, statements that he's made publicly and privately, is that he was not all that enamored of a program that would encompass WU, in the sense that it would be harder to pass politically. It's one thing to have a program that studies UFOs, sensor data, things flying around in the sky, the threat to military assets. It's another to go ahead and be boots on the ground, talking to people who encountered Bigfoot, poltergeist, the kind of things that we saw at Skinwalker Ranch. My sense is that Chris was not comfortable with a program that encompasses that because it would be harder to pass politically. Do you have a sense, or have you communicated with him or followed him to any degree, whether he is on board with the broader scope and OSAP-like program?
I have not been in communication with him, but I would like to think he's on board, because I think, as you stated, we need to follow the evidence wherever it leads. And the last thing we need is a stigma on top of a stigma. UAP have been stigmatized for 80 years, ridiculed, denied by our government. And we don't need another resurgence of that applied to an actual phenomenon. We need to just look at the phenomena, do the research, do the investigation, and try to figure it out. And I know you've brought this up before, but you've stated in the past that if OSAP was never removed and the funding wasn't stolen, if it had been continuing up until this day, it's a possibility that we would know so much more about the phenomenon than we do today. And so the way I see the Gillibrand Amendment is that this is basically making amends for a catastrophic decision by our government to just ooze out propaganda for decades. And it's like, now we're all pretending like, oh, it's real and we need to look at it. Well, we've been needing to look at it for 80 plus years. And so I really love this Gillibrand Amendment and the ASRO. It's going to be much more robust than Project Blue Book. It's not going to have a hidden agenda behind it, or at least it doesn't appear that it will, to downplay the phenomenon itself. And it's just, it's really mind-boggling that the US government is finally doing this after hundreds, if not thousands, of pilots and military personnel and guards at nuclear launch facilities and you name it have been seeing these things. And obviously it's an inherent national security issue. And all of a sudden now, 80 years later, the US government is looking to put in some serious funding to get to the bottom of it. It really is mind-boggling, but look, better late than never.
Has anyone heard any budget numbers? I haven't seen any. No. Does anybody have a sense of when where the legislation is, how far along it is, when a vote might happen, either on the amendment or the larger bill, the defense authorization bill? Don't know.
I've heard that this could be passed and that this office could be established in October of 2022 is what I've heard.
Senator Gillibrand from New York. I don't recall hearing her make a comment about UFOs, UAP at all prior to this. And then this week, this interview with Brian Bender, she was pretty much out front on this and not backing away, that it is something that we really do need to study. Not only the national security implications, UFOs over nukes, but aviation safety, things of that sort. Is anyone surprised by her entrance in such a big way into this topic?
I didn't expect it. All of a sudden we see the Gullibrand Amendment. I'm like, okay. I'm like, this is amazing. Where did this come from? And she says in the interview with Bender, she goes, you know, the past couple of years, 2 or 3 years, the pilots, military folks have come out, and she goes, that really influenced her. She said, also, in the past 10 years, she's had meetings on this subject. Maybe she can count the meetings on one of her hands. So it's like, so she obviously has had other meetings, which I would love to know about. But then Billy Cox wrote an article today, and he says that in her language, and I missed this totally, he says she wants them to figure out the quote unquote intentions of UAP, which is, that's what we all want. So, I mean, she didn't back away from anything controversial in there. So it's great. I'm from New York, so I'm even more excited. So yeah.
I mean, what I think what we're seeing, she did this to impress her kids. That's what actually happened. I mean, what we're seeing is that we have influenced UFO Twitter, everybody here and everybody not here. We've influenced pop culture. We've brought it to the point where her kids are talking to her about UFOs. And this is what's so exciting. It's not the government is finally going to figure it out for us, you know, stop lying to us, but it's a symptom of how far we have come with pushing people that our representatives are representing us. And that's what I think is so exciting. I don't think the government's going to figure this out for us. They do have better sensors. They have a lot more experience. And I'll be damned if anybody tells you different. They have a lot of documentation on UFOs that is collected centrally at a location in the United States. So whatever. The point is that they have been researching this, but also the civilians, us, everybody involved. You know, this is our job. The government's not going to figure anything out for us. We need to do it. But it is a symptom. What we're seeing is a symptom of our progress. And I think if we utilize pop culture, we get this conversation with the youth of America, the youth of the world, and we keep pushing forward, how can we not come to a point where we get more answers?
You know, Colin Kelleher has said it a couple of times, including in an interview with UFO Joe that may or may not ever see the light of day. I don't know. He says that, look, it seems like somebody at the senator's office read the book, the Skinwalkers of the Pentagon book, because in the back it outlines what the program should look like, what it should study. And a heck of a lot of that stuff ended up in her amendment. I don't know if it's a coincidence or synchronicity or that somebody on her staff actually read that material, but I'm glad. I mean, I'm really glad. I'm surprised because it has been expressed to me in very distinct terms that a study that encompasses what OSAP did would have a harder time getting passed. I mean, it's one thing to approve a program that looks at the military and national security aspects, but when you're talking about Bigfoot and Sasquatch and hitchhikers, that's a harder sell.
Yeah, Senator Gillibrand, like the fact that it was so specific in the language of, she's got to have read what you guys put out. She's got to be well informed. The idea that she's creating this anomaly surveillance and resolution office as like a permanent thing, that's such a cool title if you really break it down, by the way. That's cool. But the Aerial and Transmedium Advisory Committee, just the fact they're using the word transmedium, which you, George, you and I really emphasized when we were on the Rogan show last time, is the word transmedium, why that's so important related to UFOs. So she knows what she's talking about, or this bill knows what it's talking about. And again, remember, these are the highlights, bringing up the idea of recovered UFOs, the exploitation, the possible exploitation of UFO material or just full-on UFOs, like Bob Lazar told us. That is astounding to have an illegal bill. But additionally, the fact that they're going to be looking at and trying to standardize the analysis and reporting of like health-related effects of UAPs, that's astounding. And then we're not done yet. You know, rapid field investigations, nuclear incidents, all of these things were mentioned in this. And so somebody is advising her. I mean, this is not like a layman's kind of amendment that she put together. I'm really, they got to have read your book, George.
You know, I think the last time we all got together and talked about this, Danny, you'll recall us predicting that there would be pushback, you know, major pushback. The closer you get to the goodies, the more pushback you're going to have. And, you know, we haven't seen what's going on behind the scenes yet. We see senators coming out in favor of this, bipartisan. I mean, Roy Blunt and Marco Rubio agreeing with the senator from New York about the need for a program like this is astonishing in itself. But we don't know what the pushback is going to be in Washington. We do see little glimpses of it on social platforms, accounts that suddenly get created in October and November that are now experts on ufology and start telling everyone what to believe. You know, that's a minor level of it. But Danny, do you think that there's going to be significant pushback at some point before this thing becomes approved?
You know, there's always two sides to the coin, and we know there has been pushback. Elizondo has talked about problems he's had. We don't always get to see it. I hear things here and there. You know, not everyone wants this out. Other people do, and it does feel like we're winning. At the same time, and me and Joe often kick this around, is we're the UFO topic is basically going up against not only the military industrial complex, not only rogue programs, not only 80 years of secrecy, not only private contractors that, and Lou has floated this idea. We've talked about this core story, and it seems to be true. And one part of the core story that I don't necessarily doubt too much anymore, because Lou's brought it up, is that possibly private industry hasn't been given the same technology at a same even level. So that's a whole other thing. You know, it could cause not only bad feelings, but legal problems. If one company was given extra tech and the other company wasn't, and we're talking about huge military contractors like Lockheed Martin, I mean, that's a huge issue. So not only are we fighting that, then we're fighting people with religious beliefs or just don't want it out. So it has to be huge. And what I'm really happy about is more and more politicians are now coming out, and they don't feel like they're committing career suicide by doing this. So the stigma has been broken down politically. And I think that's huge. And I am surprised, and at the same time, I'm not, when I see more politicians come out, because we know they're getting the briefings. We've at least heard that. We haven't always known exactly who's getting what type of briefing and what's included, but it's moving pretty fast. And with the Gillibrand thing now, it just seems to be like a perfect storm. Now, will that be successful? Will everything be hidden? Will the public get it? That remains to be seen. And they definitely have a huge fight against them in their future. And I've described it as a war, and I do see it that it's a war between the secrecy and the transparency. The more transparent groups, I know OSAP was, hidden in a way, but I also view it as more transparent. I view ATIP as more transparent, and all these SAPs and rogue programs are kind of on the other side of this war.
Joe, I don't know if you've been sleeping lately, but it seems like you're not getting a lot of rest because you're writing 3, 4, 5 things a day, covering the broad spectrum of a whole bunch of different events that have happened in the last couple of months. We'll get into some specifics, but give me your sense of overall how things are going right now.
I have not been sleeping properly, but it's not because I have shadow people hovering over my bed. If that happened, I don't know what I would do. And I make it clear, I don't want that to happen. So I'm excited what's going on. I mean, usually when I come on here, there's always something going on that gets my spirits up, because there are times when we go through lulls, and we've been told that it's going to be a long, a lot of us who have been in this for a long time we don't get upset if we don't hear new information for a couple of weeks, a couple of months. But to hear something like this out of the blue, because nothing was really going on new, and then all of a sudden Gallego and then Gillibrand and then this is OSAP after your book came out. And your book, which I don't promote something if I really don't like it. Your book is something that I will read over and over again, because there's so much information on there and in there. And I'm really surprised that people in our community, a lot of them have shunned the book. They won't read it. I'm like, what do you think about the book? Well, I haven't read it. I really don't want to read it. I'm like, how could you not read, the day-to-day goings on of a UFO program that went on for 2 years? I don't get that. And yesterday, Lou was, one of the interviews he did for a show, I think it's called The Observers. There was an outtake, and he's like, I have the government trying to pull my security clearance, but also ufology is attacking me. And he was really, you could see how upset he was with that. He's like, I did not expect the UFO community to come out. I thought I was doing something good for them. I don't know if those folks will ever come around. I think eventually ufology will be irrelevant if this becomes mainstream. It's gonna be overwhelmed by mainstream scientists getting involved, and they are getting involved. You're not hearing as many names, but you're seeing the tide turn. Even SETI did a show on this the other day. So you're seeing some of the hardened skeptics saying, I think we better start paying attention.
Ryan, one of the commentaries you produced on your YouTube channel recently looked at an event that has now been largely forgotten. These ex-military guys have a news conference in Washington. It's happened before, but not since the big UFO progress that we've made in the last couple of years. And they describe these incredible events at nuclear missile bases and other facilities where UFOs hover over the weapons storage areas, in some case disabled the missiles. That seems to be a really big deal, but I don't know, it kind of landed with the thud. It didn't seem to get a lot of mainstream media coverage.
Yeah, that's really bizarre to me, but it's also bizarre that we've here's a quote from Gillibrand, and I think it's really apropos. She said, let me get to that quote. She said, burying our heads in the sand is neither a strategy nor an acceptable approach. And she's referring to UAP and investigating it and trying to figure out what is the agenda of this technology, who's behind the wheel, does it represent a national security issue? And this should have been a discussion we've had for decades, but we really haven't. So I don't know what's going on psychologically. I don't know how you can have a forum with a bunch of people that are entrusted to literally launch ICBMs at Russia or China in the midst of a horrific wartime scenario. They're tested on the regular to ensure psychologically they're very sound and sane, and they're very highly educated, and there's been an enormous amount of these witnesses that the foremost expert on this subject, Robert Hastings, has documented. And here we have a conference where they come forward and they talk about their experiences, and the media is like, oh, whatever. I don't understand it. I hope there comes a time, because in all reality, this is one of the most important components of the UFO issue. I mean, if there are unknown vehicles intelligently operated surveilling our nuclear ICBM missile bases and sometimes even tampering with that technology. Where are you, media? Where are you, journalists? Why are we not making a bigger deal of this? I really don't get it. I can't give you a good answer for why it has been received with a thud. I just don't get it.
Anybody else want to weigh in on that? Go ahead.
I do. Yeah, that's so I saw that. So the idea that Robert Salas is a friend of mine, and he had this cool experience. He was at a nuclear facility with 10 Minuteman missiles, and they all got shot down by a UFO that was hovering over the base at Malmstrom Air Force Base. And he came forward, and actually he came forward thinking it was his event that became declassified, but it wasn't. It was another similar event. But he came forward anyway. It's so interesting, the history of that. That's Robert Salas, and he was part of that you're talking about, UFO Jesus, that event. But I'll tell you, man, from being part of the citizen hearing on disclosure, my buddy Ruben Langdon, the unsung hero of the citizen hearing on disclosure, of UFO disclosure, man, to do a 7-day event, to record that, and how many years has it taken us to get it to be free to the public on YouTube? It was done in like 2013, I think. To get the media's attention on something like that, like you and me, we're interested. We see the importance of that. But to really capture the imagination of pop culture and the media, it's difficult to do. You need help. You need a machine behind that. So that recent conference was really cool. It repeated a lot of what was done with the disclosure stuff, and then also the citizen hearing on disclosure. And I think we just got to keep pushing forward. But I'm not surprised that it's not like huge news, because you need to approach it from from a pop culture standpoint.
It seems like there's been a dearth of coverage among big time media organizations. I suspect that they're all working on something. We keep hearing that 60 Minutes has got a couple of stories in the works, and the New York Times may be snooping around again, but those big platforms haven't done a heck of a lot for a while. Hopefully they're going to come up with something. Anyone else want to weigh in on that UFO nuke stuff before we move on?
I can weigh in
Go ahead.
on the media coverage. I am a little bit surprised, because what's going on now, to me, seems bigger than the task force report in a way. But we saw that run up to the task force report that got huge media attention, and I think maybe they got a little tired because there was all of that. A lot of editors were probably on board, and then they were saying, now maybe they don't want to do it because they spent so much time on the task force report. But I hope that goes away, and we see the renewed interest, because for all means necessary, this is bigger than that task force report. Although I guess, in retrospect, we didn't know what the task force report was going to entail. So it could have been really huge. Unfortunately, it wasn't as big as we wanted. It was still really cool. It also was lacking in a lot of ways. But I think, they're tired now because of that. And that's unfortunate. I've also been really surprised because James Lukatsky came forward. That's another Lou Elizondo right there. And we've been wanting that. We've been hoping for that for years. And there's a guy equal, if not, larger in scope because of the program size of Elizondo that's come forward. He hasn't been doing as many interviews as Elizondo and things like that, at least not yet. But I'm kind of surprised that hasn't been a bigger mainstream media story as well. So that's something that I hope catches on. And we know how the mainstream media can go viral. One little story pops off, and it could be months later after it happens. And then all of a sudden, all the other agencies are picking it up. So I'm hoping that's what occurs in this situation.
I know OSAP was the biggest UFO program in the history of the U.S. government that we know of. It had 50 plus employees, a couple of hundred subcontractors at one point. It had a broader scope than Blue Book or Grudge or Sign or any of those things, or ATIP. And yet it also has kind of landed with a thud so far. I'm surprised. I would think that there'd be a lot of people trying to follow that up. Anyone else want to talk about the nuke stuff, Joe?
Yeah, I was surprised, but I don't know if they needed a better presentation. I don't know if there was somebody that they could have hired as a presenter, because watching it, it was a little monotone, and it's a very important topic, but it came across a little flat. But yeah, I am really surprised that more people haven't jumped on the Gillibrand Amendment. And I don't know if anybody's maybe George, you would know if anybody has attempted to interview Lukatsky. You would think, but right away, if they hear his story, I don't know if it's going to be a turnoff if they hear about what he experienced at Skinwalker Ranch and they don't want to go in that direction. One of the things related to what you said earlier about what kind of pushback we might get, just want to quote Billy Cox because he's such a great writer. He goes, if this becomes law, the Gullibrand Amendment, he goes, look for our elected, as yet unnamed, and likely corporate guardians of the status quo to make a run for the vomitoria. And yeah, he says their bête noire will be a legislative invention known as ASRO, which will have unprecedented authority, and it's guaranteed to piss off more than a few turf-obsessed barons of existing bureaucracies, military and civilian. It's even looking like the squishy Air Force will have to strap on a happy face. So it's like, yeah, we're going to get pushback. It's a matter of, will they be successful in limiting funding? Because we all know if they don't get funding, it's dead in the water.
You know, one of the other events that any other time would have been huge news, it did get some coverage, was this event at the National Cathedral, where the DNI Haynes is there, Avi Loeb is there, Senator Bill Nelson is on tape being interviewed. That's an amazing panel. I mean, my impression of that is not many of them went too far out on the limb, but just the fact that people of that caliber were all on the same stage, at least edging up to the edge of the UFO, UAP, ET possibility was pretty significant. Joe, why don't you start with that? What did you think about that event?
I thought the way she struggled to say extraterrestrially was a sign that she was not comfortable talking about that. And I don't know if it's a matter of we're being overwhelmed by too many, between the nuclear, the press conference, what you just spoke about with Haynes and Nelson, and now we have the Gillibrand. It's like, for us, it's great. I'm not sure if the general public is getting overwhelmed a little bit too much. Not that I'm complaining, because I'm happy that it's going on. And then people said that Jeff Bezos, they're like, there's a rumor that he's going to join the effort to investigate UFOs. I'm like, I don't think so. And then he came on and said, well, I don't think there's really a chance that we're being visited. But that event is important for the mainstream. I'm not sure what kind of audience they had on YouTube, but a friend of mine is like, that National Cathedral?
Yeah, Cathedral, yeah.
He thought that they purposely chose that to just get the message out to the mainstream. I don't know if that's true or not. But it is, put it this way, if we think we're overwhelmed now, just imagine when the mainstream press actually does get a hold of it, because we know how they are with cable news. They will just cover this 24/7. Once they, I don't know, we thought that should have happened at this point by now, and it hasn't. And I don't know, I don't either. Ryan said he can't explain it. I can't explain it. You can't explain it. So, but if we ever get to that point, I think it's going to be just nonstop UFOs.
Ryan, there was DNI Haynes, Director of National Intelligence Haynes. The program is called Our Future in Space, so it's just kind of an amorphous title for the event. But she knew going in she's going to be asked about UFOs, UAP. She agreed to be part of it. I mean, I think that's a step forward, regardless, even though she didn't really say too much that goes out on a limb. Just that she agreed to do it is progress.
Absolutely. And when she made the statement that there's always the question of whether some of this phenomena we're encountering is extraterrestrial. She explicitly and intentionally left the door open to the idea that it is a possibility that some of these UAP may have an extraterrestrial origin. So that alone, I think, was huge. I mean, this is the number one spy official within the United States government, as the director of the national intelligence. And then she could have refused. That she had no obligation to be part of that. And she knew prior to agreeing that it was at least somewhat about the question of extraterrestrial intelligence. And if we're being honest, I mean, I don't know what she knows, but I would assume that she's been briefed as much, if not more, than any member of any congressional committee. And so she probably knows a lot more than she's letting on. And maybe she understands that this is only going to escalate based upon what she knows. And recently, Lou Elizondo did a media appearance, and he made an amazingly explicit statement. He said, look, I know that the US government has much clearer photographs and videos. And he went further than that. He said, look, I think the American people should be able to see what I saw. referencing those much clearer photographs and videos. And I think nothing could be more truthful than that, because I just think until the United States government releases data that is completely unambiguous and is very difficult to wave away, we're going to be kind of stuck in this process we're in right now, where it's interesting and it's newsworthy, but it doesn't really have the teeth it needs. So hopefully that will eventually happen. And who knows, maybe this appearance by the Director of National Intelligence is leading up to something of that caliber.
Danny, Senator Nelson, a former astronaut, former senator, now head of NASA. It seems like every time he makes a public statement or gets interviewed, he says something a little bit further out there about the subject. He has clearly embraced this, don't you think? And of all the people who are part of that event we're discussing, he was willing to say a lot more than the rest of them.
He has, and it's really amazing how far he's gone. It's not far enough, in my opinion. But he's making a lot of great comments, not just there, but other places. I have mixed feelings. I'm of the mind, and I could be 100% wrong. I'm of the mind that NASA's been lying for many, many years, and they've been looking at the UFO subject for many years. So I have mixed feelings with that. I don't know how much he knows personally. I would think he knows a lot more than he's saying. I'm sure that they have clearances and things like that themselves. So I have mixed feelings. I mean, a part of me is like, come on, this is NASA. They have to know more for decades and decades and decades. And the other side of me is, this is great progress. You know, I guess you could say that about any politician, but I have an especially big chip on my shoulder when it comes to NASA, because I really felt like they've been not trustworthy over the years, and as far as telling the public what they've been seeing. But yeah, it's at the same time, it's great progress. I'm very happy about it. I think, I don't know if they're just trying to kind of set the stage for what could be happening soon. I mean, maybe that's why DNI Haynes was even there in the first place. I mean, are they just kind of setting the table for something going on in the next few years or even sooner? Or am I being too conspiratorial? I'm not really sure. But at the end of the day, I'm glad they're talking about it. But at the same time, you know, come on, NASA, you've been seeing this stuff and recording these things probably for decades or even longer than some of us have been born. And I'd really like more transparency from them too.
Jeremy, you know, some of the changes that are underway right now, they seem seismic, tectonic almost, big, even if they're slow moving. And this event in DC is an example. There's Senator Nelson, who has now told NASA, hey, we're going to get involved in this. We're going to take it seriously. And DNI Haynes answering questions about it, and a lot of other indications that things are moving forward. Are you excited about where it leads?
Oh, fuck yeah, I'm excited about where this leads. I mean, this is like, this is an incredible time. I do know a former head of NASA's human spaceflight exploration programs, and even they admit this is absolutely unique. We have defense officials openly discussing the possibility that UFOs represent like encounters with machines from other worlds not made here on Earth. I mean, let's not belittle this statement that Director Haynes said. You know, she is saying that it is something that they talk about, that these UAPs or UFOs represent possibly extraterrestrial vehicles. This is not the typical day. This is Wizard of Oz, which I love. It's an incredible time. So you've got these senior intelligence officials coming forward and saying that possibly the UFO phenomenon represents, you know, an extraterrestrial presence or something like that. You know, we don't know, and I'm not claiming to know, but look, she's in good company. As the Director of National Intelligence, she's in great company. Her predecessor, John Ratcliffe, made a statement about this prior to his leaving office. Former CIA director John Brennan recently made a statement about this. And of course, Bill Nelson from NASA. So he's been saying he has allocated resources to the study of UFOs, which part of me feels like, wow, the right hand doesn't talk to the left hand. I'm telling you this, you know, George, this has been studied by every branch in our military for decades in secrecy. What we know of is just a little bit of what has been studied with this. Of course, like one of you were saying that like NASA has footage, has data. Of course, they have better sensor systems. Things come in all the time. If you have sources from anywhere, in any of these agencies, they deal with UFOs all the time. So I'm excited. I'm enthusiastic about everything, not just UFOs. It's an exciting time.
You know, somebody mentioned earlier about SETI's attitude changing. It's just kind of a subtle shift. For me, listening to the crap that SETI has put out over the years, it's not a subtle shift. It's huge. To have Seth Shostak saying something like this, and the fact that he doesn't choke on it when he says it, hey, we can't be unscientific. We have to look at, kind of where it goes. Oh my God, Joe, you've heard plenty out of Seth Shostak and the SETI folks over the years. They've done everything they can to crap all over the UFO topic.
And I do think, yeah, he's still taking his shots, but like what you just said, the fact that he's open-minded, we need to study this. I don't know, maybe he's really seeing the writing on the wall and he doesn't want to be left behind, because eventually when everybody realizes this is a real phenomenon, I would not be surprised to see somebody like him saying, I've been telling you the entire time, this is serious. We should be studying it. Now it's happening. I could see that happening with a lot of skeptics like Neil deGrasse Tyson. So that's encouraging. I'm not the one that's going to say, he's been negative the entire time. Screw him. No. We need folks like that. We need folks like that. We need Tyson. All of those folks, we need them. So another thing, people were questioning whether or not Eric Davis briefed two Senate committees, the Armed Services Committee and Senate Select Intelligence Committee. Crash retrieval stuff was discussed, among other things, by Eric Davis, and now it's in the language. So unless you're really blind and you really dislike Eric Davis, because there are people out there that do not like him, it's pretty obvious he played some role in that. But yeah, SETI is exciting, and there are other groups that need to speak up, scientific groups, and I think we'll see it eventually. But like Jeremy, I'm excited. I mean, there are days, where we go through, we deal with skeptics, we deal with debunkers, we deal with trolls, and it can be down, it can be depressing a little bit, but usually my depression will last for a half an hour and then I'm over.
Let's go back around the panel and tell me what you're working on, what's coming, as much as you can tease. Joe, what about you?
I'm working on an interview with Dr. George Knapp. He has a degree in ufology and troll killing, and Kelleher, Dr. Colin Kelleher. And I'm working on all of the transcripts related to the interviews that you guys did, which I'll hopefully be done tomorrow. Hopefully the interview will be up. Also a book review of Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, which is very long. And that'll be up by Sunday. And also I'm transcribing Lou Elizondo's interview with the theories of everything, where he talked about there's evidence that these craft have occupants. And he also went into DNA. He went into a lot of topics that he had never gone into before. He's starting to leak out a little more information. I think what he and everybody else is seeing, the general public is still not reacting to this. So if anybody's afraid that the general public is going to panic, I think those fears are being allayed, and they're letting out more and more information. And you're still seeing not much of a reaction. In my personal life, my friends and family, I'll post Gillibrand's amendment in the Political article, no reaction whatsoever. So I don't know what it's going to take to get over that hump for the regular people, regular Joes and mainstream, but that's what I'm working on. And there's an unending amount of material for me to work on for the blog.
Wilson Davis forever. Ryan, what do you got going?
Yeah, so I'm going to publish a video tomorrow. I just need to edit it. And I make a provocative prediction about the US government. And my prediction is that they will never come down on the UFO issue as they have historically in the past. For example, the United States Air Force created a fact sheet at the close of Project Blue Book in 1969. And they explicitly said that, and I have it right in front of me, no UFO reported, investigated, and evaluated by the Air Force has ever given any indication of threat to our national security. There has been no evidence submitted or discovered by the Air Force that sightings categorized as unidentified represent technological developments or principles beyond the range of present-day scientific knowledge. There's been no evidence indicating the sightings categorized as unidentified or extraterrestrial vehicles. And similarly, in 2011, there was a petition that the White House responded to, the Science of Technology. And they basically responded to a petition, and they said, look, there is no indication or evidence that we're being visited by extraterrestrials or that this kind of knowledge is being sequestered away. And that was the basic sentiment. And these are very explicit this is an explicit way to throw cold water on the subject. So the question emerges: if there's a precedent that our government has come down so aggressively on the UFO subject, why would they hesitate to do it now when for the past 4 years, the media storm has been exploding? Witnesses from the Nimitz events, such as Fravor and Chad Underwood, not to mention the former head of the ATIP portfolio, Luis Elizondo, have been doing the rounds on mainstream media, making amazing proclamations that the UFOs are real, that they're technology beyond known technology of unknown origin. So if there is a historical precedent that our government has come down on the subject, why would they not do it today? And my hypothesis is it's because they can't get away with it anymore. There could be legal repercussions to do so. And the bottom line is they have the forensic proof that this phenomenon exists. So I'm going to make a provocative prediction tomorrow where I'm going to say the US government will never come down on the UFO subject. Or let me put it this way: an entity of the US government will never come down on the UFO subject as they have in the past. And that's what I'm working on.
Awesome. Danny, what's cooking in the silver record?
I've been writing a lot less, and I've been just talking more. And I've been trying to, not that I'm never going to write again, I definitely am, but I'm trying to talk to people. I thought it was a really big deal when you wrote the book with Lukatsky, because we hadn't heard from him on the record. And I thought that changed a lot of things when we did that. So I am working behind the scenes a little bit here and there, trying to get more people to talk that we don't hear from all the time. There's a lot of big guys that talk all the time, and we get a lot of great information from them, like Elizondo. And then there's a lot of people that don't really speak. And I think it's important to try to get them to talk a little bit more. So I am just trying to do that here and there. But I'm still here. I'm not blogging as much as I used to. I may swing back around to that and do it more, but I'll still always be here in the UFO community and doing my thing.
Jeremy, how many irons in the fire do you have?
You know, look, at this point, I'm ready to slay debunkers. I'm ready to extinguish the fire of ignorance. I am excited, man. This is a good time. And I think that everything that I'm doing right now, you're going to know if I succeed. If I succeed, it's going to make noise. So right now I'm listening, I'm paying attention, and I'm getting ready to slay dragons.
Gentlemen, it's great to talk to you. Thanks for sharing your time with us. We'll be putting this out in a day or so, and stay in touch. Thanks.
Thank
you.
Thanks, everybody.